The TCG-exclusive archetypes are known for being mostly horrendous. This statement was further backed up when Tistina was released in Duelist Nexus. The Aqua-based creatures operated around flipping cards face down to interrupt your opponent's plays and give you advantages on your turn. Instead, the only thing getting flipped was these cards into bulk piles due to inconsistencies and subpar effects. Today, we'll look at why Tistina's failed in the TCG. In the TCG set The Duelist Nexus, players were given 7 new cards to start their experimentation of Tistina, including the star of the show, Crystal God Tistina, a level 10 Aqua monster with 2000 attack and 3000 defense. During your main phase, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position, and then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. If any opponent's card destroys this card in its owner's possession, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. Its partner in crime, or combo, is Demigod of Tistina, another level 10 Aqua with 2000 attack and 0 defense. If you control any Tistina card, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then you can add 1 Tistina spell or trap from your deck to your hand. During your opponent's turn, if you control a Crystal God Tistina, its quick effect lets you change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. Sentinel Tistina was a level 3 wind Aqua monster with 1200 attack and 1400 defense. If you control a light Tistina monster, you can special summon Sentinel if it's in your hand or graveyard. It also lets you target 1 Tistina monster or 1 face down card you control, destroy it, then add a Tistina card from your deck to your hand once per turn. Hound of Tistina was a level 4 Earth Aqua with 1800 attack and 700 defense. This card also lets you special summon this card if you control a light Tistina monster once per turn. And Tistina monsters you control can attack directly while your opponent controls a face down defense position monster. For spells, we can start with their field spell, Divine Domain Ba Tistina, which during your main phase once per turn, you can send 1 Tistina monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then, if your opponent controls 3 or more face-up cards, you can special summon 1 Crystal God Tistina from your hand or deck. If this card is destroyed by your opponent's card effect in the field zone, you can special summon 1 Tistina monster from your deck or graveyard. Breath of Tistina was their continuous spell that, during your main phase, allows you to normal summon a Tistina monster in addition to your normal summoner set. You can also target 1 face-up monster you control, or if you control a light Tistina monster, target 1 face-up monster on the field instead, and change that monster to face-down defense position. Then add 1 Tistina card from your deck to your hand, except Breath of the Tistina. Signs of Tistina was the only trap introduced in their first wave of support. This continuous trap card's effect can be activated by targeting 1 face-up monster on the field. Special summon this card as a level 10 light Aqua effect monster with 0 attack and defense, and it had an effect on your opponent's turn that, when the target leaves, destroy this card. If Signs of Tistina leaves the field, you still destroy the target. Though Yu-Gi-Oh has other types of interruption to affect your opponent's plays, like destruction, removal, bouncing, and negation, flipping your opponent's cards face down has always been one of, if not an underrated form of interruption in the game. Flipping cards face down can stop your opponent from using certain card effects, essentially turning them off. They can also cancel out lingering effects on monsters, completely ignoring stat boosts or changes, dodge certain card effects, and even make monsters forget where they were summoned from. The most popular way players use this mechanic is to stop their opponent from using monsters for extra deck plays. By flipping the monster face down, depending on when the monster was summoned, they can't be used for extra deck plays, as monsters, by ruling, don't have levels, attributes, types, or stats when face down until they're flipped face up. If you use it on a monster that was just summoned, you effectively remove that monster as a threat for the whole turn, as monsters can't change their position the turn that they're summoned to the field except by card effects. This can hinder your opponent's synchro, Xyz, or link plays. Only fusion summoning has been shown to ignore this rule entirely as long as you control the card and the card performing the summoning allows it. Outside of that minor problem, Tistina was given a powerful mechanic, giving their archetype a unique way to disrupt your opponent's turn. The only issue is that Tistina lacks the punch to capitalize on it. It all starts with their new boss monster, Crystal God Tistina, who already was a brick due to it having no way to get to the field except by tribute summon, or by meeting the gimmicky requirement of Ba Tistina, which needed you to send 1 Tistina card from your hand or deck to the graveyard and have your opponent control 3 or more face-up cards to get it onto the field. Its effect of flipping cards face down wasn't a quick effect, but an ignition. The card's effect must be declared and require a manual activation. This gave a clear window for your opponent to respond to and to limit the usefulness of the card, since it could only be activated during your main phase. Crystal God was useless going first, and was just as bad going second. Demigod was also just as mediocre, though its flipping effect was a quick effect at least. Not only did it specifically require a Crystal God Tistina on the field to activate its effect, but its special summoning and search was one whole effect, meaning one negation completely nullified the card, which usually came in the form of an annoying fire zombie girl named Ash Blossom. The same boat goes for Sentinel, whose ignition effect needed you to target a Tistina card or a face-down card you control to search. Also, why would you want to destroy your cards, which require your opponent to pop them to gain their effects? Sentinel's effect did more harm than good by forcing you to remove your resources. Hound was also pretty useless, just granting your low attack monsters the ability to attack directly when your opponent controls face-down monsters, and a wonky extender who specifically needs you to own a light Tistina monster to be useful. To make Tistina even worse, Tistina was their only one-card combo that was only useful if going second, due to it needing your opponent to have 3 cards or more on their side of the field. The traps were also very clunky, as Science Destruction effect was good during your opponent's turn, again being another card whose effect was dependent on your opponent's plays. Finally, the deck had no end board due to the lack of extra deck options outside of the level 10 XEs and generic links like SP Little Knight or Pit Knight Early. That isn't enough to ward off decks used to playing through multiple interruptions, as the top decks have multiple extenders or engines to bait them and continue their combo to put stronger boards to break their opponents. This, however, requires a lot of pieces to work, and even when it does, the trade-off is lackluster. For a deck to be truly good on any competitive level, it must have consistency and balance, lending to a proper end board. Tistina had none of those qualities, with their brick of a final boss, horrendous end board, and fragility to interruptions. The newest support didn't fix this problem either. In Age of Overlord, the archetype got 7 new support pieces, including a new boss monster for the extra deck, Tistina, the divinity that defies darkness. This Aqua Xyz has 2000 attack and 3000 defense and took 2 level 10 monsters to make. If it's special summoned, you can send all face-down cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. Once per turn, if this card has Crystal God Tistina as a material, you can detach material from this card to have it gain 2000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. If this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card while it has material, you can special summon 1 Tistina monster from your graveyard. If this card seems weak and not worth your time, then you'd be correct. The overall reaction to Tistina the Divinity was warranted because the effects were mid. The card's board wiping effect was only useful if your setup with Crystal and Demigod went uninterrupted. At best, it had the potential to effectively board wipe your opponent. At worst, it was nothing more than spell trap removal, which isn't helpful as most decks today don't have heavy back rows. Cards like Harpy's Feather Duster and Lightning Storm can do the job better if that's all you're wanting. The detachment effect was also lackluster, only helpful in getting over high attack boss monsters or going for game, and you couldn't even get the effect consistently because Crystal God Tistina was required to be material for that effect. Furthermore, it was yet another card that needed to be destroyed by your opponent to float into something from your graveyard. Finally, this card had no built-in protection whatsoever, making it really easy to remove from the field before it could do damage if it was removed by non-destruction based effects. Tistina the Divinity failed to measure up to other in-archetype boss monsters, whether indestructible like Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, or having impactful effects on the field, like Red Supernova Dragon and others. A good boss monster for your deck is supposed to be able to be impactful on its own. Divinity's effect was solely planned around the gameplay you did before it was summoned. That's why players continue to play generic rank 10s over Tistina due to their effects just simply being better, and not having to worry about comboing correctly for Divinity's effect to be maximized. And now that you've seen the boss, you can expect how the rest of the support will be. Fallen of Tistina was a level 1 water aqua monster with 100 attack and 2000 defense. You can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to place 1 Divine Domain Bastina from your deck face up in your field zone. If a face up Tistina spell or trap card you control is destroyed by opponent's card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card to special summon 1 light Tistina monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Return to the Tistina is a level 2 fire aqua with 500 attack and defense. If this card is in your hand, you can target 1 Tistina monster you control, except return to the Tistina, and special summon this card. If you do, its level becomes the target monster's level. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target an Aqua Xyz monster you control and attach this card to it as a material. Tainted of the Tistina is a level 5 dark aqua with 2000 attack and 0 defense, that you can tribute summon this card face up by tributing 1 face down monster your opponent controls. This card's level becomes 10 if it was normal summoned or set. If this card is sent to the graveyard, except from the field, you can target 1 Tistina monster you control. This turn, it can make a second attack during each battle phase, with the downside being that you can only attack with one monster. Play of Tistina was their quick play spell card that special summons one Tistina monster from your hand or graveyard or defense position, but returns it to the hand during the end phase. Embrace of Tistina is their continuous trap card that you can activate when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field. You can then target that monster and change it to face down defense position. During the end phase, you can also target one face down defensive monster your opponent controls and take control of it. However, you can only use each effect of Embrace of Tistina once per turn and activate them while you control a Tistina monster with 3000 or more defense. Lastly, Discordance of Tistina is a trap card that lets you activate one of these effects. You can either banish a card in your opponent's graveyard face down while you control a Tistina monster, or banish all cards from your opponent's graveyard face down while you control a Tistina monster special summon from the extra deck. It also has a graveyard effect that allows you to banish this card from your grave to target one Tistina monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. However, you can only use one Discordance of Tistina effect per turn and only once that turn. There are a few bright spots amongst the new support that the archetype gained from Age of Overlord. Return of Tistina was a great addition, being an extender with a level modulation effect, making it easy for you to go into Xyz plays, especially making your rank 10 boss monster or any other rank 10 that comes to mind. It also attaches itself as Xyz materials from your graveyard, with its effect offering some recurability. You can detach it with an Xyz monster's effect, then use its effect to attach it back to that, or if you miraculously have two of them, any Aqua Xyz monster you control. Fallen of Tistina was a free terraform, letting you get a free Divine Domain Tistina into your field zone, which was a bonus because you didn't have to worry about running into certain hand traps like Ash Blossom and Joel Lockbird, since you'd be placing the spell card straight to the field instead of adding it to your hand. Play of Tistina makes the list because it special summons any Tistina from your hand or graveyard onto the field, no matter the level, and it doesn't negate their effects either. It's a free, non-negate body that you can still use without restriction, which is always an excellent resource for any deck. This is where all the pros tragically end though, as there are more cons that outweigh them, even on the cards that had good effects. Fallen's first effect was useful to fetch a field spell, but its second effect again suffered the same nagging issue that most of Tistina's cards suffered by needing to be destroyed by your opponent specifically. Play of Tistina could only special summon from hand or graveyard, and clogged if you didn't have any good targets. Tainted of the Tistina was only tainted with a terrible effect, only having a battle phase oriented effect, a terrible contradictory effect that places it on the field. Yet the search effect requires it to be sent to the graveyard except from the field. Though it's implied that this card is supposed to be used for your level 10 Xyz summons to get this effect, this only made the card niche, as it limited you from using it for other extra deck options such as link summoning. Embrace only activates after an opponent's monster activates its effect, making it a redundant interruption since it didn't do anything to stop that monster's effect. Disordinance was only good for interrupting your opponent's graveyard, which made it rather niche. It further backed up being a niche card by its mass graveyard removal effect, requiring you to control Tistina monsters special summon from your extra deck. Since Divinity wasn't worth running by itself, it wasn't worth running a trap card, which needed it to be good. In conclusion, their second wave of support was better than the first, given that you got a reliable extender and direct searcher for your field spell. However, it didn't address the archetype's issue of establishing strong end boards, poor bosses with middling effects, wonky conditions for their cards to float, and weaknesses to hand traps, which with the correct timing can end somebody's turn. Tistina is another reason the Yu-Gi-Oh community has no faith in TCG exclusives. For every one Burning Abyss, there are 3 War Rocks, Vendreads, or FA. These glowing aqua crystals had a chance to prove that Konami can make playable archetypes with unique elements and new creative ways to approach the game. But what they gave us was an incomplete gameplay with bosses that are bricks with low attack stats, inconsistent, fragile boards, and the incapability to compete with meta decks in the same era. The best phrase to use for this deck is wasted potential. There might be a chance that more support will be on the way if we're lucky enough, but for now, this archetype's hope of being good stays in the depths of locals and Master Duel. Crystal God Tistina joins the other TCG letdowns in the Hall of Fail. Although I have a quick little editor's update here. After this video was written, but before it went live, they introduced or announced a new support card for the archetype called Chaotic Elements. This card adds a level 5 or higher light or dark pyro or aqua monster from your deck to your hand. Then, if you have 3 or more pyro and or aqua monsters in your grave, you can destroy 1 card on the field. It also has a graveyard effect that if your opponent controls a light or dark pyro or aqua monster, you can banish this card to take control of it. Now, it might be odd that this card also works with pyro monsters, and that's because people theorize this card was made to support both Tistina and Ashen, another one of the failed TCG exclusives we'll probably go over in a different video. While this one card doesn't fix the entire archetype, having another searcher is always a bonus to any archetype, so it will definitely be played by the few Tistina enthusiasts. Alright, and thanks for watching. Do you know about any other archetypes that belong in the failed cards and mechanics series? If you made it to the end of the video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh content.